Hey guys, this is Tauna. Today we're going to be talking about Sergeant John Benton, probably the strongest budget commander you can ever make. This one is going to be a $15 budget, which is absolutely bonkers. But I'm telling you right now that this deck can compete with so many decks that are much higher in value than it. It is honestly insane how well this deck competes. Now, thank you so much for, coming, watching the video and subscribing and stuff like that. Typically, we've got a whole bunch of content, so make sure you guys do subscribe. We've got deck techs that come out, for everyone, and then we've got some deck techs that are for members only. So if you want to check those out, make sure you become a member and stuff. I'll put the link to that down in the comments. We have a big kind of backlog for them at the moment. I think there's like 5 or 6 now, and I'm going to continue doing those. That's just extra bonus content for just being a member. So this one here is around Sergeant John Benton, which is a very interesting character. So he's from the Doctor Who cards. He is a really interesting take on like a group hug based deck that then quickly becomes, hey, you let me group hug, well, now I'm going to absolutely destroy you. So he has trample and haste, and then he has, whenever he deals combat damage to a player, you and that player each draw that many cards. Now, typically, you're going to come in when you first get him out, you're going to go hit someone for like 2 or something like that, right? You want to try and get him out either turn 2 or turn 3. Go hit someone, and then you both get to draw 2 cards. So you need to kind of convince someone, hey, look, you get to draw cards. Is that okay? Yes, they're taking commander damage, but you are going to be drawing some cards. And typically at the start of the game, someone's going to be allowing you to get that, which is good because that's going to start you setting up to draw a bunch of cards. And the way the deck works is you draw a bunch of cards, and then you're going to get a whole bunch of extra ways to be able to buff up your Sergeant John Benton and give him protection, give him, more damage, make him flying, make him do a whole bunch of stuff, and then we're just going to win via either commander damage or just pure damage, right? So it's going to typically be commander damage because he's the only real character in this deck that's going to be dealing much damage. All right, so we've got Sergeant John Benton, obviously our commander here. Now, getting into the artifacts, this deck has been going around for a while. A few people have their own kind of interesting takes on Sergeant John Benton, typically a kind of like a budget version of him, and this is kind of my version of it here. I've added a few things that people don't typically add in, so hopefully you guys can see the kind of difference here. So starting with the artifacts, first of all, I added in a thought vessel. Now typically they don't usually have a way to be able to have no maximum hand size in this deck because you don't mind too much about chucking things out. You're drawing enough that you can kind of filter your hand out. I thought it was a good idea, especially because, we then have the extra mana that we can spend, and no maximum hand size means that you can start out a turn with, say, 10, 15 cards in your hand, and then you get to pick and choose which ones you want to use. We've also got the Hunter's Bow, which is a new card from the Assassin's Creed set, but I love it because it enters and then automatically attaches to our John Benton. John Benton, as well as the fact that it gives him reach and ward too. Giving him ward 2, I think, is great. It's kind of like an extra protection on top of it, as well as the reach, so that way you're able to block because he does not have reach. And then we've got the baseball bat in here, which means that whenever we attack, we get to tap something. So say, for example, we've given him flying, now we can tap something, or we could tap down a bigger creature of theirs. So therefore, if they need to block, they want to block with their 1/1, or they're just going to let you through. Onto the creatures, we have 6 whole creatures. Right? And these creatures are 5 different creatures that are going to give us more mana or let us put lands onto the battlefield. We will have a lot of lands in our hands. So, this is essentially 2 cheap ways to get those lands out. And then we've got Llanowar, which is going to be a repeatable way to get these lands out, as well as Llanowar Elves, Avacens to just tap for mana, and then the Bastion Protector is the only one here that is not for mana, but it's because it's going to give him +2/+2 and indestructible. So it's kind of like a aura enchantment kind of thing, but on a creature. I didn't mind having it for just an additional blocker, as well as it's going to be sticking around forever. Our enchantments here, we've got a couple ramp ones with the Utopia Sprawl and the Wild Growth, but other than that, they're just ways to buff up John. We've got Hyena Umbra, and that's going to protect him as well. We've got Noble Heritage, so we can buff him up, as well as make it so we can get protection from other people, give him flying, give him vigilance, give him additional, damage based off of how many cards we've got in our hand. Flaming Fist is double strike, and then Duelist Heritage is double strike as well. Duelist Heritage, you can also use that to work with someone. To politic with someone, because you can use that on someone else's attacking creatures as well. So if they're going in and attacking, you say, hey, would you like me to give that double strike? As long as you let me, you don't remove a creature or something. Here, I'll give that the double strike for you. And then we've got Chains of Custody here as one, giving John Benton another ward 2, and on top of that, a removal. So we can remove a target non-land permanent. Say, for example, they've got Propaganda or, Sphere of Safety, or some way to prevent you from being able to hit them, or, a big flyer or big creature or whatever. We can use that as a removal that also buffs up John, which is great. Our instants, I'm not going to go into these. These are all really, really cheap ways to either give John buffs, give John indestructible or hexproof, or, indestructible, just ways to be able to protect him, ways to be able to buff him up so that way we're dealing additional damage, ways to be able to give him flying as well. There's like 1 or 2 in here that do that. And then there's also some ways in here to remove my brain's not working. Remove artifacts or remove enchantments. I think that, here, destroy target artifact or enchantment. Reprieve is a really interesting one. This is essentially a white counter spell, because it does put it back into the opponent's hand, which is annoying, obviously, but it is going to make it so that whenever they cast something, you can just counter it put it back into their hand, so that way, it's not on the stack anymore, and now you get to draw a card. A really, really interesting card, and a really interesting kind of white counter spell-ish kind of card. It's kind of like, I can't remember the other one. There's a blue one that does very similar to it, but it's kind of similar to that. And as I said, just a bunch of ways to give him indestructible. A flying counter is great too. Or more buffs. Lands, we just have 39 basic lands. This is meant to be a $15 cheap deck, so we have cheap lands. That's the first thing I'd look at, probably upgrading, because all the rest of it doesn't need a huge amount of upgrading. But upgrading the lands so that way you have more dual lands might be an idea if you want to. I think that's a decent idea if you wanted to. And then our sorceries in here, we've got, some nice ramp ones that let you play additional lands or put lands onto the battlefield. That's basically it. Put lands onto the battlefield, destroy stuff, or board wipes. We've got 3 different board wipes in here because we can make John indestructible pretty easily. We can use stuff like Hour of Revelation here that is a board wipe that's only going to cost you 3 white, right? And then we can use indestructible to protect him, remove everything else, go in for a swing, and boom, you win. Single combat, we've only got 1 creature that we're using. Now we get to keep that, and everyone else gets to rid of their stuff. Same with Promise of Loyalty, except that one also makes it so people can't attack you afterwards, which is really cool. So yeah, this is an insanely strong deck. It's going to draw you 1,000,000 cards. You can start off, as I said, with, John Benton coming in, being like, hey, we could both draw 5 cards here. Is that good? And then they're like, yeah, that's fine. And then you come in for, 15 damage next turn. And it's like, hey, remember how you let me draw 5 cards, or 16 damage next turn? Remember how you let me draw, 5 cards and I dealt 5 commander damage to you? Well, now I win because, you've just taken all of it. It is not unusual to start absolutely destroying people like turn 4, with him, because, you know, if say, well, whichever turn after you've got him out. So if you get him out turn 2, start destroying people. With turn 3, like destroy someone out, or, you know, turn 4, destroy someone out. There's just a bunch of ways you can do it, which is really, really fun. I find him a very, very interesting commander, especially as such a huge budget commander to be able to run. So I'd love to hear from you guys as to what you think. Have you guys got a Sergeant John Benton deck? As I said, he's this weird mix between, like, you know, group hug to start off with, and then Voltron later on, and combat tricks and stuff. It's all really cool. You could build a very interesting kind of deck with a higher budget if you wanted to, but honestly, the $15 version of this is just going to be really, really strong as it is. So I hope you guys had a wonderful day, and goodbye.